Godzilla, 1954. The people of Tokyo have many questions as a 164-foot sea behemoth emerges from the Pacific to wreak havoc on their town. The origin of this movie depicts Godzilla's fall into insanity and mayhem after an American hydrogen bomb crashes in the Pacific off the coast of Japan, destroying his underwater home. So, Godzilla is ready to lash out at anyone that stands in his way. A fun fact about this movie is that the monster's head was first imagined to be in the form of a mushroom cloud. How insane would that look now if it were to be the case? King Kong vs. Godzilla, 1962. It is one of the most well-known crossover films in history, as well as one of the highest-grossing Japanese films. The main character of the film is a greedy publicist who uses King Kong as bait to try and sell more pharmaceutical advertisements on television. Unfortunately, Godzilla and King Kong are at odds as King Kong travels to the mainland. Watch this classic to find out who wins. Also, did you know that the pricey yak hair that made up the hair on the King Kong outfits was hand-dyed by Kai Miyaizo? Godzilla vs. Mothra, 1964. An archaeological research team travels to Infant Island in this part, a biome populated by tiny people with cosmic talents, to seek assistance as the world is on the verge of a catastrophic climate change scenario. Godzilla is then roused as a result, and due to the uproar on Earth, he joins the fight against the monster. A fun fact about this movie is that it had the largest attendance of all Godzilla films at the time, surpassing King Kong vs. Godzilla 1962, which sold roughly 12 million tickets. Godzilla vs. the Sea Monster, 1966. This movie features a teenager looking for his brother who gets on a criminal's boat that capsizes on Lecce Island, where terrorists have imprisoned the inhabitants of Infant Island. Thus, they decide to awaken Godzilla after spotting him asleep to free the villagers. Also, if you feel like you've become close to Infant Island, apologies. But this was the last Godzilla movie to feature a South Seas native tribe, and the last Toho movie to feature the people that call Mothra's home island, Infant Island, their home. Son of Godzilla, 1967. Godzilla found some quiet moments amid all the battles to give birth to an heir. That's right, in this film, mantises unearth a mystery egg which, when it hatches, reveals Manila, Godzilla's baby. As it portrays Godzilla in a more comical and paternal way, this movie is ideal for some quality father-son time. Surprisingly, when this film was released on home video in Italy in the 1970s, it was used as a sequel to the 1961 British monster film, Gorgo. Godzilla vs. Hedorah, 1971. Japan is once again under siege in this Godzilla series, when Hedorah, a space-dwelling monster, travels to Earth to consume the garbage and pollution to build strength. The sulfuric acid mists and corrosive sludge this hazardous threat is spewing make it unlikely that either Godzilla or civilization will be able to overcome it. Though, this film is the first and only movie to feature Godzilla flying, as well as utilizing his atomic powers. Godzilla vs. Gigan, 1972. An evil gang of alien cockroaches that are looking for a new home planet arrives on Earth, in this part, which is when things start to get a little bit supernatural. Thus, when a garbled message is found on tape, a manga artist starts to doubt his employers. Not to mention that although this movie was produced and distributed in Japan as a matinee for kids, the obscenity and violence in it earned it a TV-14 rating when it was screened on US television. Terror of Mechagodzilla, 1975. Featuring a frustrated scientist who decides to construct the creature after being shunned by the scientific world, it's time for Godzilla to rise as a savior again. This causes other aliens to begin a counterattack by recruiting the assistance of another mega beast known as Titanosaurus. This film, like Destroy All Monsters, is packed with action. The fact that this is not just the final Godzilla movie directed by Ishiro Honda, but also the last time Godzilla is portrayed as a hero until Godzilla Final Wars 2004, makes it an interesting one. The Return of Godzilla, 1984. Godzilla dominated popular culture for 3 decades, before ultimately starting to lose some of its lusters. For nearly 10 years, Toho Pictures grappled with how to restore the reputation of the enormous reptile. So, they ultimately decided on a complete reboot that acted as a follow-up to the 1954 film, which meant that Godzilla was back, bigger and more dangerous than ever. Not to mention, this is the first Godzilla movie to feature closing credits in its original Japanese language. Godzilla vs. Biollante, 1989. This part centers on a depressed geneticist who produces a monster new mutation as a result of losing his daughter. He is humiliated after the scientific community questions his science, yet he continues his bizarre experiment. The theme of this film is centered upon every man for himself and planet versus plant versus reptile. Also, this movie stated a total of a $10.7 million budget, making it one of the most costly live-action Japanese films produced at the time, as well as the most expensive Godzilla movie created up to that date. Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah, 1991. In the movie, time travelers from 2204 visit present-day Japan in 1991 to warn it of industrialization. They claim that if they don't try to stop Godzilla now, he will be able to destroy Japan since Godzilla lives on nuclear energy. but all you need to know is that this time the travel-heavy film does feature a fantastic battle between Godzilla and Ghidorah in the sea, making it anything but simple. Oh, and to further enhance the credibility of the bleeding effects, actual octopus blood was used. Yep. Mothra vs. Godzilla, 1992. The movie is based around greedy businessmen taking possession of Mothra's egg as it washes up on the shore, refusing to give it back to her fairies. Thus, the inhabitants of Infant Island must choose whether they will respond to Japan's cries for rescue when Godzilla emerges close to Nagoya. Not to forget that except for the Frontier missile sequence, this was the first Godzilla movie not to have significant revisions, as the picture stays true to the original plot. Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla II, 1993. The Japanese army teams up with the United Nations Godzilla Countermeasures Center to create Mechagodzilla, an anti-Godzilla device they call, as they are still recovering from the wars between Godzilla, Mothra, and Ghidorah from the previous part. As a result, anarchy reigns supreme when Godzilla lands on land and decides to attack everyone who stands in his path, even if doing so will result in his being killed by a massive mechanical machine. Not to mention, this movie features the highest Godzilla screen time of any in the franchise, accounting for over 20% of the total running length. Godzilla vs. SpaceGodzilla, 1994. In the narrative of the film, a Space Godzilla is created as a result of cross-pollination and an inexplicable space phenomenon. Godzilla then intervenes to defend baby Godzilla and the inhabitants of Earth when the space monster dares to harm them. Also, commending its 40th anniversary, did you know that the American director Tim Burton reportedly informed the authors of a 2019 Japanese book about special effects movies from the Heisei era that this was his favorite Godzilla movie? Well, now you know. Godzilla vs. Destoroyah, 1995. After being struck by a uranium explosion in Godzilla vs. Destoroyah, our favorite monster undergoes a frightening and potent mutation, becoming Burning Godzilla. At the same time, the Tokyo Bay Aqua Line is undergoing fresh construction, which causes a frightening reawakening of mutant crabs with the ability to combine into one enormous creature known as Destoroyah. Just another day for Godzilla, right? Also, this movie, along with Mothra vs. Godzilla 1964, was the only one in the Godzilla franchise to win the domestic box office championship for an entire year. Godzilla, 1998. 1998 proved to be quite interesting for the American audience, since Godzilla made its way to the Western audience for a reboot. The action juggernaut Roland Emmerich directed the star-studded production, which was overseen by actor Matthew Broderick from Inspector Gadget and Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Additionally, it offered Godzilla a new Genesis tale in which a nest of lizards was accidentally mutated by French scientists during a lab experiment that went horribly wrong. Not to mention, the movie utilized enough paint to cover the whole Golden Gate Bridge. That's right! On the other hand, the cast and crew of this film ordered "It's Gojira, you moron" t-shirts for fun. Godzilla 2000 Millennium, 1999. The Toho business once more went back to the fundamentals of the monster brand after a string of underwhelming film reviews. So, for this particular project, they introduced the Millennium series as part of this new strategy, emphasizing standalone movies over overlapping continuity. This is why Godzilla 2000 is the first movie in this series, standing apart from the 40-decade-old canon that came before it. The story of this part revolves around an alien race that wants to use Godzilla's DNA's regenerating abilities to become immortal and conquer the entire planet. Godzilla vs. Megaguirus, 2000. The second film in the Millennium series centers on an artificial black hole technology that goes awry, featuring Japan, which engineers an artificial black hole device to imprison Godzilla permanently. Unfortunately, a test of the device results in the creation of new enemies for Godzilla, including the Queen Megaguirus and car-sized dragonflies known as Meganula. More competition for Godzilla, right? Also, did you know that Toho continues to use actors from their science fiction movies from the 1950s and 1960s in their casting in this part as well? Yoriko Hoshi, who had previously portrayed Yoka in Mothra vs. Godzilla, plays Yoshina Yoshizawa in this sequel. Godzilla against Mechagodzilla, 2002. In the fourth installment of the Millennium series, this time, Godzilla battles Mechagodzilla, which is controlled by a person inside the machine. The 1954 Godzilla movie provides the basis for the previous movies. However, this one claims that Godzilla is still alive since his bone bits have survived. Basically a win-win situation for the audience. Interestingly, director Tezuka intended to include a moment when Yumiko Shaku, who plays the lead role, swims past the camera up close while wearing a swimsuit. He regrets leaving it out to this day. Yep, that's right. Godzilla, Tokyo S.O.S, 2003. The first and final film in the Millennium series to be a direct sequel to the one before it is the fifth installment. After facing Godzilla the year before, the Mechagodzilla robot is upgraded and repaired in this film. But will humanity act morally when Godzilla, Mechagodzilla, and Mothra continue their conflict? A quick fact check reveals that the movie is the only one in the Millennium series to share continuity with a work from the same era, serving as a direct sequel to Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla III, 2002. Godzilla Final Wars, 2004. The sixth and last tale in the Millennium series was portrayed in this series. And trust me, the movie is packed with action, monsters, and mayhem, because it was released to coincide with the Godzilla franchise's 50th anniversary. Although the movie officially doesn't seem to be connected to the original 1954 movie, it does resemble 1968's Destroy All Monsters in certain ways. Despite contrast to several earlier movies where Godzilla was mostly an ally, here, Godzilla must battle the impulse to harm people in order to safeguard the greater good. Godzilla 2014. Godzilla is prepared to wreak havoc in San Francisco in yet another American remake of the classic. Godzilla, a godlike creature, is the only ally to mankind in this series and is thought to aid in defending Earth against other hazardous monsters. This one is a jam-packed action movie and a fantastic place to start if you're seeking for a Godzilla entry. Not to mention that while filming, cinematographer Seamus McGarvey unintentionally visited the lakeside set of Dawn of the Planet of the Apes because it resembled this one quite a bit. Shin Godzilla, 2016. Shin Godzilla, also known as Godzilla Resurgence, was released by the Toho Company in Japan 12 years after the last Japanese Godzilla movie, Godzilla Final Wars. After nuclear waste leaks into Tokyo Bay and causes a mystery sea creature to evolve, this film's Godzilla origin story adopts a sort of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles style. It's worth noting that Hideaki Anno, the director, originally planned to incorporate a family drama and a romance subplot in the film. Would have been fun if that were to be the case, right? Godzilla, King of the Monsters, 2019. Given how many times the Godzilla property has been remade, it is impressive that this is the first direct sequel to an American version. This Michael Dougherty directed and co-written movie takes the relationship between Godzilla and the US military and takes it to Antarctica as the monster battles newly arrived titans King Ghidorah and Rodan. An interesting fact about this film is that Godzilla is regarded as more of an amphibian than a real reptile because he can breathe using both his lungs and gills. Godzilla vs. Kong, 2021. The 36th installment, Kong Skull Island, serves as a sequel to both the 2014 and 2019 Godzilla films, as well as the 2017 King Kong reboot. It is directed by Your Next alum Adam Wingard. The two monsters engage in a battle of epic dimensions that must be seen to be believed, when Godzilla detects a disturbance on Skull Island. Who do you think will win this battle? What's more, where will Godzilla wind up after the most recent installment in one of the longest-running franchises ever? That we'll have to wait and see. Not to forget, this MonsterVerse movie is the shortest, clocking in at only 113 minutes.